Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Catching-101 TV. Unbelievably excited for today's guest. He's a guy that I met online through social media a couple of years ago, and then we met at CatcherCon, had some great conversations, and it probably isn't public news, but I've invited him to speak at CatcherCon before, and it didn't work out in the past, but he's definitely got an open invitation for any time in the future where he's able to. But today's guest is a former big league catcher, current big league catching coach, Eddy Rodriguez. Man, welcome to the show.
Hey Zan, how you doing, man? Appreciate you having me on. Had a blast when attended CatcherCon, an unbelievable event to make sure that we continue to grow the catching position and growing, quote unquote, the culture of catching that has been, jumped into the forefront here recently. Over the years, that was never the case. So it's been really cool that, ambassadors like you have been able to bring add to a piece of that. So appreciate you having me on and excited to tackle some of the topics today.
Yeah, man. Well, I definitely appreciate you saying that. It's kind of you. Now, in case somebody, again, former big leaguer, current, big league catching coach, I would imagine most people probably have heard of you or know your background. But maybe if somebody's just finding or watching this for the first time and they're being introduced to you, would you mind just briefly kind of, going over your background and your baseball history and kind of how you got to where you are before we dive really into the, the deep dive of the content?
Sure. That yeah, I'll give you a quick synopsis of kind of my trajectory. I was born in Cuba. I came over on a raft when I was 8 years old, and that's how I like to think I've been fortunate enough to live out the American dream. Legitimately came to this country because in the one that I was at had my parents realized that I had no future, and then they sacrificed and not only sacrificed our lives. I mean, we big gamble, but we also they sacrificed their well-being to provide a better life for me and my sister. So that's how I started. I had some pretty humble beginnings in Miami. Grew up in probably not the most comfortable neighborhood, but I think that all those different things make you grow a little bit and make you aware of everything that happened. I would not change the place I grew up with. I wouldn't change anything about it because I think those situations taught me a lot. But it would be I don't know that I'd want my daughter having to do that process. But so I went to Coral Gables High School. After that, I mean, I played Little League, went to Coral Gables High School, played at the University of Miami, was alongside some of the great players that are still playing in the major leagues, Ryan Braun, John Jay, Yonder Alonso. Was very fortunate to be part of a very talented team in 2006. Very talented team with 8 of us getting to the major leagues, with me being the one to get the least amount of major league time. An unbelievable team. We still have a group chat going. We're actually planning another Zoom call next Saturday. So it's great to be a fly on the wall on those because anything and everything comes out. We forget that we're mid 30s now, and the guns come off. The gloves come off. Everybody's going at each other aggressively, but went and played professional baseball. I was drafted in the 20th round by the Cincinnati Reds. I was released at age 22, played independent baseball for a couple years, was prepared to finish my degree, become a teacher, and run fishing charter guides. And then all of a sudden, the Padres needed an extra catcher in minor league spring training. So somebody took me in as a favor, and I got a lot of playing time at the back end of games after I had caught 3-4 bullpens during the spring training minor league games, and things went really well. Made a name for myself, then actually got a lot of playing time that year. Signed with the Padres again, made my little, my short cup of coffee, my debut with them. Then after that, played with several ball clubs. My last one was the Yankees, but right before New York, I was let go by Tampa Bay, I coached for a year with the Red Sox in the rookie ball, where I had Rafael Devers, Michael Kopech, some of the big name kids, and then I went back to playing for another 3 years, which was where I met my mentor and probably everything that I've become as a coach or as an instructor or whatever different titles I may have in the baseball world right now comes from the person that I was able to meet with New York, and he's somebody that I've been fighting. He likes to stay away from the public eye, but he's somebody that we're talking about receiving numbers and all these things being really prevalent in 2019. He was doing it in 2013, and so little things like that. But he was the one that I met, brought that to me, helped me out, helped me learn what I did, and prepared me to become a coach, prepared me to become whatever I become. Then I went and I took a year off in 2018. I had opportunities. Actually, I had a major league opportunity. It wasn't the right timing. Wanted to be home. And there was some minor league opportunities, a big league opportunity. And at that time, I don't think I was prepared. But one of the big ones for me was I really wanted to see what it was being a catching coordinator. I think that being a catching coordinator better prepared me for my current role. And I'll tell you what, being a catching coordinator, it's a challenge. We definitely have less players than, a pitching coordinator, hitting coordinator to oversee. But I took it very personal, and I take it very personal with every player because I truly believe that we have an opportunity to change a human being's life, and I take that very seriously. I lived on a dream. I gave you the synopsis of my career, but a lot of people that known me, including my when I had my agent when I was playing, it's like, dude, you got to write a book, and it's not things that I like purposely made this creative. I wish I would have had a very bland, like, hey, like, college, everything went normal, high draft pick, spent a little bit of time in the minors, major league. I wish that would have been it, but it hasn't been. And I think it's made me better for that. So I take a lot of pride in knowing whenever I'm impacting a 13-year-old or a 34-year-old in Cervelli, I take a lot of pride in it because that 13-year-old is trying to, be a varsity catcher, and Cervelli's trying to add years to the end of his career. Completely ends of the spectrum, but still human beings trying to continue to do what they do and excel. So that's a little bit of kind of me and kind of where I come from, and hopefully we get baseball going here soon.
Man, I'm with you, and I appreciate you sharing that, and that's awesome. I'll be honest. I want to give you a compliment. The passion that you're sharing right now, it shows. When I met you in person, it shows what you do online, just about how you care for the players and you care for people. And that's something that all coaches and parents and everybody can learn from. But you're definitely doing a good job, and you're walking the walk. Not one of the guys that just talks the talk and talks about it and relationships and culture and this and that. You're doing it. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing about coming over from Cuba. I had no idea. I knew you had Cuban descent, but I didn't know you literally came over on a raft. So kind of cool to learn that about you.
Man. 3 days on the water. I was it was baby.
Well, we got to talk about that a little bit more detail on another time, but really cool, man. Really cool. So I definitely want to get into some catching stuff, and I want to talk specifics, but kind of before we get into specifics, one of the reasons that I like your outlook is obviously, you've recently been a big leaguer. It wasn't very long ago that you were playing, still. Now you coach at the highest level. But it seems like, just from following you and your tweets and the information you put out and listening to you on other Zoom calls, you also really have your finger on the pulse of amateur baseball as well. It seems like you kind of have a good feel of what's going on in the little leagues and high schools and college. And maybe that's because you were a former college guy and you're just still into it. I don't know. But if you had to, just wipe a broad stroke of what is the catching world going through right now, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts. And again, we can get into specifics about receiving, throwing, blocking, that stuff later. But do you think the catching world is moving in the right direction? Do you see negative things happening? What are your thoughts on that?
look, I goes back to kind of the general concept, good or bad, of where we're headed. I like the fact that we're getting attention, right? I think catchers are getting attention. I think that there is a big emphasis on our position, or a bigger emphasis on our position that there's ever been in, literally, I think, in the history of the game. Like we've always talked about it behind closed doors, like, the catchers are the backbone, the catchers are the this, the catchers are the that, but it didn't really show a lot by all of our actions. Our actions as managers, coaches, farm directors, whatever. We didn't always show that same, unless you were the star, and then if you were the star, you were going to be the star no matter what you did. So I like the fact that we're getting more attention, right? But, going back to even something before we hopped on here that I was talking about, my fear is that putting content just to put content out. That's my big fear. My big fear is, and then the black and the white. Those are probably my two biggest fears. Just putting things out that are not vetted, right? And then if they're vetted at the major league level with our, we have world-class athletes. We literally have the best players in the world that at our disposal in organizations. And then we have data on that, and then we track a lot of these things, and then we, like, one of the things we've talked about is, like, dude, you've told me, man, I wish we had access to some of the information that we have, that it would help the amateur world, and I think 100% it would. But you have to also, like, the concept is these organizations are investing millions of dollars into analysts, software development, all these different things, and that's why even with me, I'm always very cautious, because I have developed some things, but I am very cautious to put it out there, not necessarily because of putting it out there, but the fact of, like, this organization is paying me a salary to make their catchers better. It would be unfair for me to, take that and utilize it in another place. Just like when I have a kid paying me for a lesson, I rarely post videos of any of the drills I do or anything. It's all by design. Like, it's not because I have the magic drill or the magic thing. I guarantee you we're all doing very similar things. But my theory with all of it is, if I have somebody that's paying me X amount of money for X amount of time, then I don't think it's fair that I give it out for free to somebody else, that this person is sacrificing their time and their money. Like I mentioned in my introduction, I grew up dirt poor with, no money. I couldn't afford to do a lesson. But what I'm saying is, anytime that somebody dedicates that time, I want to make sure that they get, it doesn't go public, right? And even when I do camps, I'll do camps in the off season and things like that. All I tell parents are, video everything, video every single drill we do. Please don't post anything on social media. Not because of I'm afraid somebody's going to steal my drills. Not because I don't really care about any of that. My big fear is, or my big concept is, if you're paying for it and you're here, you're present, you could have spent that money on dinner with your family, hotel night. You could have gone this weekend and done something else, but you're spending it here with me. I want it to be personal. I want it to stay in. So, and then, like, the other one is the black and white, right? There's a lot of content, right, coming out. It's like, no, this is how you have to do it. No, this is how you have to do it. And it's like, well, is it, right? Is it that way? Is it percent that way? We have a league where, Altuve and Judge are on the same league, right? And I think it's highly unfair to say, like, the only way to catch is this way. The only way to throw is this way. The only, like, all of that scares me, because after playing for as long as I did, seeing as many different players as I have, and being around the game for as long as I have, like, it's so hard to pigeonhole somebody that this is the only way to do it. So I think we're in a good place, because we're at the, we're being talked about a little bit more. But my fear is, and I spoke about this in a different podcast, and what I said was, we in baseball, we needed to change the good old boy club. There was a change that needed to come, and the change has happened. But let's not create the same evil we tried to destroy, which is let's destroy the old boy club. Let's not try to build the new boy club and everybody happy with each other, kumbaya, so we could keep bringing our buddies into the organization. Why? Because that's what happened when I was playing. It was like not every coach was there because they were the best coach, but it was because the other guy liked to have a beer with this guy at night, right? So my fear is that us younger guys. I mean, I'm 34. You know, you have Craig. I think, and you know, Craig is young. Like there's a lot of young guys coming in. I'm talking specifically to the catching position. My fear is that we create this whole little, little circle, and we do the same crap that was done before. We just do it now as opposed to 30 years ago. So that's my big fear and my big cautious trigger on this.
And I think that's a very fair, warning. And I want to go back. First of all, I completely understand that you and other guys that work at big league clubs, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of money being put into research and development and software and systems and analytics. And definitely not going to ask you to share anything that not allowed to share. But I'm with you. I mean, I do like putting out content like this for free. It's a way just to, one, for me to just connect with guys like you that I haven't spoken to in a while, but also just to, extend the conversation. Kind of hitting on what you spoke about last, one of the things that I love about the catching community is how willing people are to share their info, whether it be on Twitter or at a conference or just, like I said, in the back of a bar with two dudes having a beer. Catching guys seem to get along, where if you get on hitting Twitter, pitching Twitter, whatever, I mean, there are arguments that you'd think it would be fistfights about to break out. But the catching guys all seem to be friendly, and I wouldn't say everybody agrees with everybody all the time, but there's definitely there's the opportunity to have groupthink, when everybody is trying to jump on board with the new stuff and everybody's diving headfirst in, and we're all moving, really fast in one direction. And that's one of the things that I really like about you is obviously you do it in a respectful way, but you're not scared to maybe say something like, if you feel like something's going wrong, hey man, you don't mind saying it. You know what I mean? If you feel like some guys are maybe speaking, and maybe it's not wrong, but it's just premature. Guys are saying things prematurely. You're not scared to call guys on that either. And I'm kind of the same way. There's some things that I would say have taken me a little bit longer to jump on board with maybe than other guys that are hot in the catching world. But that's one of the things that I appreciate about you, and that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you here.
But Zan, to add, I'm sorry to cut you off. To add a little bit to that, I had somebody, and I'll keep their name off, but I had somebody message me after I posted something, and somebody messaged me like, "Hey, I don't really mean to disagree with you, or I don't really mean to rub you the wrong way, but I don't see it." And I go, "Oh," and then they kind of mentioned I don't like confrontation. I'm like, "Time out. Confrontation's not a bad thing. Talking about this thing is not a bad thing at all. You and me disagreeing on this, that is a bad thing whatsoever. Now, we need to be civil enough to sit down and have a conversation and throw the facts at each other. And even if when we leave there, we still think the same way that when we stepped in there, we need to have the ability. But that's my fear, right? My fear is, and even in the chat that we did with the guys, I think 2 Tuesdays ago, it's like I feel like not saying something is saying something. I'm a firm believer of that. If I just stand there and I know some of this crap is just not accurate, not because of anything, but because there's been research done. Like I said, Josh Paul did this crap in 2013. 2013, 2014, he was doing all the crap that we're talking about right now. Receiving numbers, quote-unquote shadow zones, all these different things. The reason that Josh Paul went and grabbed me out of being a coach was because I was a great receiver. It wasn't because of video. It was because there was data to back it up. This is 2015 when he brought me in solely based on those numbers. They had been working on this thing for 2 years, and it was created. So that's my big one, right? So I'm like, dude, let's go at it, but make sure you're ready to give me facts. If you give me facts and you disprove me, I will sit back and I'll be like, you know what? I haven't looked at it from that angle. Let's take a step back. So I just wanted to make sure I added that, because that is the reason that I do speak up, is because me not saying something could be affecting that kid in the middle of the country that has dreams of becoming a baseball player, and because he wholeheartedly believes something, because looking up to this person, now he's going to go in the wrong path, and maybe now he can't live out his dream. I feel responsible for that. That crap matters to me. Maybe I'm going a little too deep, but that shit matters to me. It just matters to me.
I'm really glad you said that, to be honest. And I go through the same stuff. I'll be honest. So on social media, Twitter especially, I like to ask controversial questions. I like to, engage in controversial topics or conversations. But I rarely get too deep into a disagreement with somebody. I may disagree, and it's like every time I do, I'm going to have a couple of messages in my DMs or my private messages. I wasn't trying to offend you. I'm like, hey man, I wasn't offended. Like I can think differently than you, and you can think differently than me, and that's perfectly fine. I promise you, I'm not going to lose any sleep tonight because some guy on Twitter has a different opinion than me. And I think that's valuable. You need to be able to do that. And just like you said, I feel like you and I are probably on the same page about a lot of things. But if we do disagree about something on this show, it doesn't mean I have any less respect for you. It doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means we're going to engage in productive conversation. And I'm with you. I think the catching world needs that. I really do. Like I said, I love where the catching world is going. There are more instructors and more coaches and more guys doing research and diving in. I think that's great. But I think at times, I think that's a very good point you made. I think there needs to be more maybe constructive conversations. So really good point. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. What would be the first topic? And I probably have an idea where you can go with it, but what would be one of these topics where you maybe see maybe a lot of people are taking it, but maybe you have different thoughts, or maybe you see something different than what's popular right now?
I mean, I'll take it to Craig. Craig knows how to stir the pot, because he knows exactly. Craig gets it, and what Craig gets is Craig is way better than me at at staying somewhere in the neutral line, and he knows. I'm a little bit more. I got a little bit more Cuban in me, so I'm maybe a little bit too aggressive, but for me, what scares me is, and I had this talk actually with somebody today about it, and I've continued to have these conversations, is it's the knee down thing, right? And the why not, the this, the that. And I'm going to preface this with saying, if I would have stayed as LA's catching coordinator, there was two catchers that were going to catch knee down with men on base all year for me. And if we fire off a 2020 season, Ryan Lavarnway is going to catch on one knee all year. So it has nothing to do with me being against what it can or can't do. But there's just not enough data to prove any of the crap that's being put out there. There's just no data to prove it. And there's just none. And that's the hard part, right? Because here's the thing. Catching on a knee down with nobody on base or with non-blocking situations, I would literally push every single catcher to do it as often as possible. Why? I could get quote unquote as nerdy as me going to Auburn University and measuring the amount of ground force that a ball applies on you with being on one knee down, or I could go as simple as saying it gets me closer to the bottom of the zone, right? I could go on that spectrum wherever any body wants to discuss the knee down. I'll gladly do it from that entire spectrum, right? Now the next thing is the conversation that I was having today. Does it make you a better receiver to be with a knee down? I think on average it does. I think it definitely, with men on base too. Does it make you a better receiver? I think it does. Does it make you a better catcher? I don't think it does. And the only reason I don't think it does is because I have enough information to prove that it doesn't work. and this goes back to data and research that I've done on my own. Zan, I've always had a fear. I have like FOMO, uh, and for me is the fear that because I'm so on the other end of the spectrum that I'm like, dude, am I wrong? Am I the one that's wrong? Am I the one that's completely off base here? Do I have a blind spot? So I've gone and done research, and there's still nothing that points to, hey, every catcher needs to go to a knee down with men on base. There's nothing that shows that yet. So far, the person that did it the most, Mitch, he became a better receiver. So he went from being way below average to being average. He was one of the worst blockers and one of the worst throwers in all of baseball, right? He hit 35 pumps. Did the knee down save his life to hit 35 pumps? Who knows? Like, where can you know what I mean? Like, where is it? We don't know. But all we know is that it happened, right? And then you have JT, right? JT, as Craig would say, JT is a freak athlete, right? JT, out of the top 10 catchers in baseball, is the only one that utilized the knee down with men on base. JT could potentially do anything behind the plate, and because he is so athletically inclined, he could get away with a lot of things. He's one of the top throwers, if not the top thrower. I think he averaged like 89 miles an hour to second base and averaged like a 189 or 190, something like crazy. Mm-hmm. He was one of the better blockers in baseball. And I think in receiving, he was up there somewhere in the top 10 or 15, somewhere around there. Every other catcher that was in the top 10 and all those things, Roberto Perez, the other Gold Glove guy, like whatever, these guys are catching the other way, the standard way. But here's the fear that I have. The fear that I have is, like, if I have Brian LaVarnway or if I have Matt Wieters or if I have, it's like, hey, dude, maybe we do need to catch with a knee down. The reason being is your mobility is not as good as it was. Your flexibility is not as good as it was. So we need to go in there knowing we are going to become better receivers, but we need to go in the back of our minds going like, hey, like, our throwing and our blocking is going to suffer a little bit. There is people that have talked about that catchers become better blockers. I know that the one organization that did it predominantly last year, they weren't better blockers for it. The only reason is because I had one of my analysts track every single one of their blocking opportunities, and it didn't show it, right? It didn't show it. So it's like, okay, now if I go to throwing, like, hey, was JT because the cool thing about it is you could make an adjustment as the guy starts running. Was JT so athletic that when he saw the guy going, he could reorganize his and be in a good spot? And then even if he was in a bad spot, he's got 90 down to second base, which is unheard of. Nobody does that. Like, it's just a freak, right? So for me, it's like, yes, this is an option. This is a great option for this player. It doesn't mean that every single catcher that I ever get is going to be doing the same exact thing. The way that I've structured my system and the system that we create, that I saw created by Josh Paul, then I brought it over to LA, was a system of we're gonna train isometric abilities of your lower half. How can we hold tension? How can we hold tension and redirect tension as soon as the game dictates? In other words, how can we be in our secondary stance, wait to see if that ball's in the bottom of the zone, or you have to block it, or you have to throw the guy out? How can you hold that tension and transfer that power? So what we focused was with our strength and conditioning department and with the program that I had put together, we married both of those, and every single exercise that the catchers were doing, there was an isometric part to it. And I know that this probably resonates a little bit with you. I know you like to take care of your body. I know you like the weight room, and I know you like to do a lot of these things for wellness. The isometric tendencies and abilities that we brought to these kids was the game changer. I brought knowledge, the catching knowledge, but I'm telling you, as soon as I took the job with LA, I messaged our strength and conditioning coordinator, and I flew to Anaheim to meet with our analytics coordinator, and I told them, you two guys are the biggest parts of my catching department. One of you is gonna get my guys to be physically able to get what I want out of them, and one of you is gonna help me measure it. And those two guys were the pillars of me creating a catching staff that did what they did in terms of they went from 25th or 26th in receiving to 6th in receiving while improving blocking, while averaging, as an organization, we had major league average pop times. So as an organization, we were major league average, which is unheard of. Like, these are things that I don't tweet about, I don't message about, because I feel like these guys earned it and this is their careers. But at the same time, it's like, dude, like, yeah, I could go and drop them all to a knee, but are they all gonna, what happens like when the automated zone comes? Like, that was a question, I saw, like, the automated zone, right? So then that means I need to now, the 3 years I spent teaching these guys to be on a knee, now that's completely out the door. So now I need to go and change the entire organization. No, let's build the foundation. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be a more sustained harvest, as I call it.
I like that, man. So I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of great info there. There's 3 real points from that kind of talk that I want to hit. And if you see me out looking down, I'm taking notes and I'm trying to write and do everything at once too. So the first thing you said, being on a knee down with the runner on base probably on average makes you a better receiver, but may not make you a better catcher. Okay, I think that's huge. I think that's an important thing I'd like you to expand on a little bit. Right now, it seems like the trend is because because of the Hawkeye and the TrackMan, and we're able to actually get analytics and measure catchers. It seems like a lot of people, and maybe rightly so, are placing a huge emphasis on the receiving part. Okay. But what you're saying is, yes, while receiving is important, you can't neglect the blocking and throwing. It seems like a lot of guys are kind of neglecting the blocking and throwing, or they're at least, putting it a lot lower on the priority list than it used to be. So where do you kind of put those things? And if you had to, I don't know if rank them is the right word, but maybe you kind of see where I'm going with that.
I'll give you a very simple response to this question. The point of baseball, and we've talked about it for years, is 90 feet. Keep the opposing team for advancing 90 feet. Keep double play in order. That's why we hit the cutoffs. Advancing 90 feet. And analytics is the same thing. Run probability like skyrockets, especially from a man on first to a man on second. Skyrockets. So the way that I think about it is, yes, analytically, because it's what we do the most, receiving is the one that we can make an impact the most often. But I will tell you this much. One pitch stolen is not really a one. It's all based on probability. I mean, I think this is, this is public knowledge by now, but like each pitch is given a probability of 0 to 100%. So if a pitch is a borderline pitch, you don't get full credit for that. You got one full strike. And then you tally all those up, and then that gives you a number at the end of the day. Well, here's the thing. One full base, I think if you got full pitches, it's something like a full strike and a half I think like about a full strike is what it takes, or maybe a full strike and a half is what it takes for it to make up for a full base. So in other words, you really have to steal 3 to 5 different strikes, depending on all their values, for you to equate one free base, right? Because everybody talks about, well, what we've been able to find out is you don't know what run lost you or won you the game. You don't know what strike won you or lost the game. So we have to account for all of them. So like we've always thought, like, hey, like in the 9th inning, everything matters more. realistically, you might have lost the game or won the game in the third inning with
Mhm.
a move that happened there, a ball that you caught wrong, whatever, something. So like we hold everything in a vacuum. Everything is one. So the way that I talk about it is a couple things. I try to tell my I tell my catchers we're stopping 90 feet, and if the guy's at home plate hitting, we're receiving. That's how we're stopping that 90 feet. But anybody that's been behind the plate understands what a pitcher feels when he knows he could bounce that 0-2 breaking ball or that 1-2 breaking ball. They know what it feels. There's not a machine that can measure it yet. And I'm telling you, Zan, I was very fortunate to have a great mentor that taught me everything about analytics, or not everything about analytics, but showed me analytics in the catching world way before anything has even popped up in social media or anything. I was very fortunate to learn from this person. And we still don't have a way to measure that feeling inside that the pitcher goes, oh crap, I can't rip this curveball. I can't spin it as hard as I want because the game, we're tied up. It's the 8th inning, and this guy hasn't blocked 3 balls for me in the last 3 games. Like, I remember that. The other one is we know what the pitcher feels when there's a fast runner on first, and he's trying for that guy not to get in scoring position. That feeling inside, that front side flies a little bit early. What happens if I'm a pitcher, one, I know that this guy's going to receive, but two, I have like this peace of mind. He's a wall back there, so I could rip my best pitch, and I know he's going to throw somebody out if somebody goes. Those things are not measurable. We can't. There's not an analyst in the world that could do it. I've actually thought about doing it based on pulse, based on what you're, based on your heart rate. Like, right, what happens in that situation, right, and all these different things. Like, thought about these, but we can't measure it, and that's where we're not valuing it because we can't measure it, and that's where I think we're going wrong. Just because we can't measure it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. We've gone away a little bit from the guy that can make contact. And look, I'm all about the home run and the ball in the gap and OPS, and I'm all about those, all about it. But there is something to be said, and I don't know what it is yet. It's not my department. I don't dive too much into it. But about that guy that can get the barrel on the bat and put pressure on a defense. There's something about it. Even if he gets out, I feel like something was accomplished. So that's where I'm kind of at on it, right? Like, just because we can't measure it and just because our jobs, like, we don't get promoted on it, doesn't mean that that thing ain't real.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point, and for me, receiving is kind of the new shiny toy right now where, 5 years ago, you weren't really able to measure it. 10 years ago, you definitely couldn't measure it. And now because we can measure it, it's almost like the scale of it is, holy cow, we can measure it. It's got to be the most important thing. And I'm with you. I still think receiving is probably the most important, but I don't think the other skills have dropped off as much as maybe some people are saying. So I think that's kind of,
100%.
I think we're on the same page with that. So let me kind of switch gears and ask you another question. We're talking about and again, we got a lot of things to cover, but we're talking about guys in the one knee stance and the one knee setup. You talked about guys, particularly with, mobility issues. Who do you think is a good candidate that should, maybe look to move from a traditional stance to a one knee stance, or who on the flip side, who might be a guy that, man, there's no way I'd put him in a one knee stance?
And I'll go very straightforward. I think, look, LeBarnway, but he's more of a AAA big league guy. I'll give you a guy like in the big spectrum, and he's already doing it, so it's even better. Salvador Perez, right? 6'3". He's got a cannon for an arm, so he's not going to really miss out much on the throwing. But Salvi's a guy that should pick his spots and should almost be 50-50 in terms of his setups. He should almost be 50-50. And the guy that he's working with, which is Pete Griffol, which is actually the guy that taught me how to catch in high school, which is kind of crazy. But Pete, they're already trying it. And the only reason I know is because Alfaro's down there with them in Miami, and they're all playing with the new toys. But the guy that to me sticks out. Like, yeah, like big human being, hitter, big human being, has good hands. We've seen him now. Like he's changed his hand path. But that's the thing, right? Everybody's talking about the knee, the knee, the knee. Well, the biggest noticeable difference with Salvador when you see him is that now his glove is working like this, and before his glove was working like this.
Mm-hmm.
That is the big anybody that's seen those couple videos, and I had seen some videos that Alfie was sending him, but anybody that's seen that, it's like, yeah. But here's the thing. The thing is, oh well, if he wasn't on a knee down, he couldn't do that. Bull crap. He could do it. It would just be more challenging. Why? He's 240, 250 pounds,
He's a big
6'3",
dude. Yeah, he's a big
human
dude.
being. That's a big human being. Like, that's a big human being. You know, then I like to throw Matt Wieters. Only reason is he's just older. He's I think he's my age. He's 34, 35, been in the big leagues for a long time, lanky, long femur, you know, like all these different things. Like, yeah, this guy checks a lot of those boxes to still be productive behind the plate while doing this. But then like Austin Barnes, like, no, this guy is, he's,
Yeah.
you know, 6'1", 6 feet, athletic freak. Like Alfaro, he's built like a brick shithouse, like strong as hell. Like Alfaro's looking like you these days. Like he's a monster. It's like, no, like there's no need. Like now, hey, Alfaro at 32, 31, 32, 33, maybe. But now, no, he could do all of them. He could do all of it. He can do it. He's gonna be successful. Like those are the things, right? But like, you know, you see a guy like Tyler, right? Tyler Flowers. Tyler Flowers made a decision. Tyler Flowers said, you know what? Teams are paying players for receiving. I'm gonna do it. And Tyler went on and has been arguably one of the worst blockers and throwers. I think he averaged like a 2.13 last year to second base. He's one of the worst blockers every year, but he is traditionally one of the best receivers every year. So what do? He goes, I know what I'm going to miss out on. I'm still getting my $3 to $4 million a year, boys. I'll see you at Bank of America every 2 weeks, right? Like he made that decision, right? So there's so many things, but should the 14-year-old in Iowa, you know, be on a knee down? Hell no, he shouldn't. He shouldn't be, because that kid still needs to learn what his body can do. He doesn't know what his body can and can't do, but now I've put a governor on it. Now I'm like, hey, Matt, you just so you know, you're a knee down guy. Oh, the other guy, you're a knee down. Everybody's a knee down guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That doesn't feel right to me. I feel like there's a growth. I feel like there's a point where you're like, okay, now I am a knee down guy because I can't do this, and that. You know what I mean? So I think I guess that's the way that I would word it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I kind of want to expand on that because that's something that I was planning on speaking on a little bit later, but I want to go ahead and jump into it, which is basically the difference between, you know, pro ball and amateur players. You know, another last week during that Zoom, you and I had kind of a side conversation going on through text message. And we said back and forth a couple of things. So I'm with you. Like I said it the other day, I'm calling myself cautiously optimistic. It looks like guys going down. I'm optimistic about it. I think that it's going to work for a lot of guys. I'm still cautious. I don't think it's a 100% given, like you said. I don't think it's, hey, everybody, you got to be on a knee. You got to be here. You got to do that, because that's how we're doing it. That's what it's done. For me, the biggest problem is at the big league level, there are statistics. Like I said, there's Hawkeye. There are hardware and tools in place where, Eddie, if you decide to get on a knee, I can measure you on a knee versus in a traditional stance. If I'm growing up in Madison, Mississippi, there is no TrackMan on my field. There is no Hawkeye in there. There are no statistics. So I feel like a lot of times we're kind of shooting at a blank target, you know? So that's where I feel like the biggest disconnect is. And I'm not telling guys that it may not be right for you, because it may be right for you. My thoughts are it's just much, much harder to evaluate at the younger ages, because I don't know if you're doing better or if you're doing worse. Part of it's because the umpires are, let's say, much more inconsistent. The pitchers are much more inconsistent. And then there's really no way to numerically put a value on it. Like I said, if I'm in high school or even younger than that. So maybe that's a rant, maybe another topic. But yeah, I think you kind of feel the same.
Well, I mean, that's exactly where I sit in, and that's where I'm like, when anybody tells me no, I got data, I'm like, time out. Go ahead, enlighten me. Give me numbers. Give me out of X amount of blocks, because I mean, I have a chart that I logged 9,000 blocks for my catchers last year with the Angels, and I know exactly what location these blocks were. Were they successful? Were they not successful? And then Sharif Offman, who was gonna be my catching analyst this year with the Marlins, built something with one of our interns that is special. And I'm actually ticked off that the season is not fired off, because this was really going to be able to further I wouldn't say further enlighten me, but further give me, hey, am I making the right decisions in the things that I'm doing? Because look, I'll tell you, and I'll make this really quick, but one of the things that I changed last year, and this is where I tell you, I'm like, people are like, oh, what are you? Are you this guy or are you that guy? I'm like, no, I'm a whatever gets the job done guy. That's the guy that I am, right? So for years, I was all about, you have to finish in this perfect blocking position, right? The position we're all in, close our eyes, the knees down, 5 holes covered, that whole deal, right? I go, that's the only way we finish. If you finish in any other way, you're not a good blocker. Whatever. After 8,000 blocks last year, my 3 best blockers would start in a traditional stance, and when they would finish the block, they would end up on one knee. So that one knee down that Yachty done for so many years, they were my best blockers. They were my best blockers. So what did I do? In Instructs, I went and did research on, like, how can I teach this? And now those guys that were really good at doing it, I just tried to teach them their way. So instead of, when we would start like our blocking drills, instead of starting them traditional 2 knees down, I'd be like, hey, let's go 2 knee down, right knee down, left knee down. Let's feel it. Let's make sure that we pretty much.
Let me ask you this. Do you think they were having success because of what they were doing mechanically, or because of their instincts, or probably a mixture of both?
It's a great question. Right? I don't know the why. I don't know why they were having more success, but I do know that all 3 of my best blockers were 240-pound guys that some people before me had deemed them too fat to be catchers.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they were my best blockers, were my heaviest set guys, like guys that were upwards of that 20% body fat. And those were my best blockers in a substantial amount of repetition. Meanwhile, the one guy that was the most athletic that I had, that everybody thought he was the best blocker, was not the best blocker in the order. And I'm just talking about numbers, success rate. How often did somebody advance a base on him on a ball in the dirt? And now, look, we could go into, like, divide this by levels. We could really dive into this data, and there's going to be holes in the data, because there could always be holes in the data unless you control every single variable, and that's uncontrollable, right? We can't control every single variable. But you're right. I think really the reason that they were more successful was because they were getting down quicker, and they were centering the ball in the chest protector. Really, and anytime that they had to get both legs down, probably their bodies didn't let them do it. So the one getting to just one knee, dropping it, was helping them get into position a little bit better. I don't know the exact answer. I do know that instructs. I started to hey, how do you, like, I had enough data that now I knew how they blocked the best. Hey, we're gonna try this, and this, right? We're gonna do this, and that. So that's the way that I always like to teach. If I don't have a fact, like one of my things in my handbook with any team I've ever been with, if I can't prove it to you, you have the right to walk away from it. That literally word for word. If I can't, and then I also said it to the coaches. I go, coaches, if you say anything to a catcher and he asks you the why, and you can't tell him why, just know that they have 100% my backing to walk the hell away from me, because I think it holds us accountable. If we can't prove it, then don't say it. Don't come out and say it. So
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I like how you experiment with those guys. The guys that were blocking more traditionally, and once you kind of switched them over to doing that, did you see much of a change in those guys?
I didn't change any of the guys. So the guys that weren't those, I didn't change them, because I mean I was there for 1 year, and
Yeah.
so my going into this season, my goal was to make specialized practice. So right, so if you were gonna block today with me,
Gotcha.
you weren't gonna
Gotcha.
go through the whole routine. You were just gonna do this one thing that you were getting better at, right? So that's the part I didn't get to dive in, but I was gonna address the guys that were like at the bottom of the bottom third. I was gonna address some things with those guys, but a lot of those things, I wasn't gonna force feed any of them into anything until I had enough data to prove it.
Yeah, well, and that's actually a perfect transition into one of the other topics. It seems like one of the other, you call it hot topics or hot takes right now in the catching world. It seems like a lot of guys are switching more to, hey, we're going to coach guys individually. Maybe we have less of a, call it a system. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but maybe not a system, maybe not like you said, the way you used to block. Hey, we used to block like this. This is the right way. It's how we're going to do it. That's what we do. Now guys are, well, this guy can do it this way. This guy might do it a little bit differently. What are your thoughts on individualism? I mean, I think there's definitely, players are different athletically and skill wise and talent wise and anatomically and all that sort of stuff. How much, individualization do you feel should be, placed in a catching or a group of catchers?
It's easy for me. I have two catchers at the major league level, and it's a walk in the park to individualize. What was hard for me was last year being a catching coordinator, trying to individualize for 25, 30 guys. So what I did was I gave a lot of power to the coach that was at that level, to the point that one of them became the catching coordinator for the Angels this year. He has never caught an inning of professional baseball or college baseball. He was an infield guy and a manager last year. But Ryan Barba, took the challenge of one conversion guy and like the catching program, and not only mastered the catching program, made it his own, to the point that he would call me and be like, "Yo, E, I'm gonna try this drill out." I'm like, "Sounds good. Try it out. Let me know how it goes." He goes, "But you don't want to see it?" I go, "No. If it's that bad, I could fix it in a day or two. And if it's that good, I'm gonna look smarter. So I don't care. Like I can't lose." And that was so cool. And I think what mistake that we make as coaches is, if a guy has one bad day, it's like, oh my God. Like, oh my God. It's like, no, time out. Time out. If I'm good at what I'm doing, you can't mess up this guy enough for me not to be able to fix it. Right?
Yeah.
You can't mess somebody up, especially at our level or even at any level. Like it takes, if I'm not mistaken, it takes like 21 days to acquire a new skill. It's like you're not gonna mess up somebody that bad because you taught them like glove low like this versus like whatever. I don't care what it is. You're not gonna mess them up that bad. But what it is gonna do is you're gonna grow as a coach. You're gonna grow because you're gonna go, oh crap, this guy, he didn't even fight me on this. Oh shit, now I need to make sure that it works. Oh my God, now I need to put energy into it. I need to, and so that's where it helped me with the individualized stuff was I had these individual, how can I put it, relationships with all the catchers that I would text them, but for me it was all jokes. I would just keep the human being happy because I had put together a system where I had what I would call my command center, that I had all my receiving data, throwing data, and blocking data that I could go see and be like, hey, what happened with that block in the third inning and yesterday? Oh, well, how did you see it? I'm like, no, just talk to me through it. Tell me what happened. Oh, this, all right, done. Like we addressed it, done. And or I'd be like, hey, like, man, that was a heck of a block in the 6th inning to keep you guys in the game. Like these little things is how I did it. Now with me having 2 catchers, it's very simple to do it. To the point, like, so my job with the Marlins, I also oversee the minor leagues. And what I told our general manager and our vice president is like, look, if I can't manage 2 catchers while being able to oversee the other guys in the minor leagues and our catching coordinator, then I'm definitely not, suitable for any job in baseball just because we have to do so much. So I think it's a great fact of going to each player. But I think the big one is forget about us. Forget, and I had a learning moment, and this will tie into this kind of individualized. So right before we break for COVID, Alfaro, I start talking to him about being on his right knee down when he's going inside to a right-handed hitter with nobody on base. And I'm like, yeah, dude, just check it out. And he's receiving. You could tell he's feeling funky. He just feels awkward. And I'm like, all right, hey, you're good. You tried it. He's like, all right, sounds good. So he goes back. So all of a sudden, about 2 weeks into COVID, 3 weeks into the COVID break, he goes, hey, bro, I'm going to send you some videos. And I'm like, sounds good, Alfie. Send me some videos. And it's him catching with the right knee down. And I go, what happened? He's like, what do you think? I go, no, what do you feel? Talk to me. He's like, well, I saw Perez doing it, and then I tried it, and I like it, man. I think we should start doing it. And that moment right there, I was like, should I go, yeah, dude, I told you about this 3 weeks, or should I just shut up and go, I love your idea, let's do it?
Yeah.
So I went with option number 2. I was like, I'm going to put my ego aside. I'm like, I'm putting it aside. So then, like, another week after that, he goes, hey, you tried this with me, right? Right before the break. And I go, yeah, we did. He goes, dude, I really like, and now, like, we're doing Tuesdays and Saturdays over here in Jupiter, and he's, like, doing it on his own. So it's like, these are the teaching moments. The teaching moment, we don't know when it's going to happen. Is it a text? Is it a this? Is it a that? Who cares? But I don't think we need to be hard set on one thing. I don't think we need to speed it up. I think everybody learns a little bit different.
I think, man, it's such a funny story, and it's cool. One of the things that I've said for a while is I really like getting the catchers that I work with. I like getting them involved in their training program, because you want guys. The more that somebody thinks it's their idea, the more ownership they're going to take over it, the more invested they're going to be in it. So the example that I give a lot is like a hip mobility program. If I'm working with a guy who has tight hips, I'm not going to say, hey, man, you got to do these 3 exercises every day, and that's it. A lot of times I'll give them, hey, let's try 10 exercises. You tell me which 3 feel the best to you. And then when you get their input, they feel like, man, this was my idea. Yeah, I like these 3 exercises. That's why I'm doing them. And then they want to do it more often. They're a lot more likely to stay consistent with it. So I think it's funny, as a coach, you kind of got to be, a psychologist and psychiatrist sometimes, and you just got to figure it out, man. But I like stories like that. That's definitely interesting to hear that happens even at that level.
Those were the best for me, man. Like last year was a big year for me because when our farm director, he's like, hey man, like I want to make sure I hire some like catching fourth coaches for you. And I go, don't. I go, hire guys that have never caught. And he looks at me, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, why? I'm like, yeah, because they're not going to be biased on anything. They're just willing to try everything out. Mm-hmm. And what I did with these guys, Zan, I'm not kidding you. Like, I would be like, hey, you guys tell me what we're practicing in today. Like, you tell me what our schedule is today. I figured that the more autonomy I would give to everybody, the more ownership that I would give them of their thing. Our DSL, Dominican Summer League hitting coach, was a former catcher. And, like before the catching coordinator before me, like he was kind of like, not oppressed, but like, hey, like you do what I say. So in my thing, I was like, dude, like speak up. I need you to speak up. I need you to, because maybe 90% of what you're going to say might already have connected. But there's 10%, 20%, I don't know, maybe 100% in there that is going to help me become a better coach, which in turn helps me get a guy closer to the major leagues. And once again, if I stay true to that whole like get guys to the next level, maximize their talent concept, then I'm a firm believer that like I can't fail. I can't fail. If I stick to that concept, it is fail proof that I cannot fail.
That's just a good coaching philosophy, man. So whether you're working with catchers or pitchers or whatever, I mean, I love that you take that attitude towards it. It says a lot about you and your character and what you do. So appreciate you sharing that. We've been on here for a little over an hour. I got one more topic I want to cover before I let you go. I know you got your family there. You kind of mentioned it earlier and spoke about it in passing, and somebody mentioned it on Twitter, and it's another interesting topic, the electronic strike zone. I feel like I've got different thoughts on it than probably 99% of the catching guys out there, but I'd love to kind of hear what you think about it first, and then maybe I'll share with you what I think.
So I think we've gently touched on the subject, and I'm not gonna lie to you. It's an immovable object, right? I can't control it. So my theory with anything that I can't control is I'm not going to worry about it, right? The only thing that I think it will do is it's going to diminish one of the skills that a catcher has an opportunity to make money on, right? I think a Max Stassi, who's one of my good buddies, and he's added years to his career. Tyler Flowers, like these guys have all added years to their careers by being able to receive a baseball. I think that we would not see those guys make money for their family. We would probably see somebody else that could, hit more or block more, throw more, whatever, right? So it would just change to somebody else. But to me, like, I'm indifferent. I'm honestly indifferent. I honestly hope it doesn't happen because I guess I don't have a real reason for it. I generally don't have a real reason for it. But I do know that if it does happen, the Marlins catchers are not going to be affected by it one bit in terms of our development or anything like that. I do know that. I'll guarantee to the point that even last year with the Angels, I told our farm director, hey, let's start prioritizing like blocking and throwing in the DSL in the Dominican, because these kids are 4 years, 5 years away from being major leaguers. Let's start prioritizing that. Let's put receiving at the back end. Like I had started to think about it that way. So I consider it a movable object. The only one that scares me of it is, Zan, is when the pitcher wants true feedback on a ball and catchers are just gonna like be doing this thing, and that's the only one that I see, and it's gonna take that part of it away a little bit. But I think the zone's going to be called for the zone. I think offense is going to go through the roof. I think pitching's going to change. I think guys trying to nip the top of the zone with a big breaking ball. I think there's so many things that are going to happen, and I hope that everybody doesn't think that the only effect is going to be like the strike zone itself. I think the pitching's going to change. People are going to start nicking at the little corners, that up and in quadrant that is unhittable and not called. I mean, like those are the ones that are going to be the biggest changes. But I'm indifferent. I get romantic because I'd like to keep the receiving still around, but the Marlins catchers will be ready, and I know also the Angels catchers will be ready because he's doing the same stuff.
Yeah, I would say I'm similar. I feel like I consider myself indifferent. I'm not completely opposed to it, and that's where I feel like I'm kind of the outcast. I feel like most of the catching guys are completely against it, and I'm just still open-minded towards it. Like I told you earlier, I'm trying to be optimistic and open-minded, and I don't think the technology is completely there yet. I think it's getting a lot better every year. I think pretty soon it would be good enough to where they really could use that. My response to everything that everybody says is, and you use the word romantic, and that's a fantastic word. I feel like every time somebody gives me a reason they're against it, it's always an emotional reason. And I get it. Baseball's an emotional game. You know that there's a lot of love. There's a lot going on with it. There's a lot of history. There's people don't want to change. Mentioned that earlier. But when I ask for a non-emotional response to it, hey, I can't get one. And for me, it's like tennis. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a tennis fan. I don't watch much tennis, but I see enough on ESPN where when somebody wants to challenge it, they have like the lasers set up, and the official can say, nope, it was 2 millimeters out. They're able to challenge it. So I don't know if it should go, full time every single pitch. Maybe offenses or defenses are allowed to get X amount of challenges per game. I feel like the catchers would love to have, the traditional strike zone we have now, but every catcher also hits, and everybody has walked away cussing an umpire, when they thought they got rung up on a pitch that they knew was out of the zone. It'd be nice to be able to challenge it and say, no, I get another swing right here. So I'm not completely against it. Again, I don't know if I'm for it. I'm just still open-minded to see how it kind of progresses, and I feel
That's
like
a good take, though. I like the challenge take. I honestly hadn't even thought about it that way. I just thought it was going to be a black and white type deal, right? Like, hey, I thought we're doing it or we're not doing it, but the challenge take, look, I trust me, the only reason I stuck around was because of my receiving. So like, I know that there was pissed off hitters. Shoot, I played against Alfaro for a whole year in AAA in 2017, and he absolutely hated me. So like, like I get it, and I like, that's what I'm saying. I I'm against it, but it's an emotional thing. There's no real reason. I think offense is going to skyrocket, and
Yeah.
I think pitching is going to change. The way that guys pitch is going to change.
Yeah, and maybe it's implemented, and I hate it. Like I said, I'm not necessarily for it. I feel like I'm open-minded towards it, and I feel like that's kicking me out of the boys' club, like you talked about earlier. So
No, I'm telling you, man, it is what. But that's the fear, right? Like, if we become too one-dimensional, then we can't. There's no there's no coaching flexibility, no coaching. It's like, hey boys, like, what do we do now? What do
yeah.
we then? Is it, oh well, now is we got to go back to 2 legs or 2 feet up or whatever it is? Do we now catch? I don't know.
It would
It's
change a
gonna.
lot. It would be a big difference between what's being taught right now and what kind of maybe what's trending in the catching world and what happens. But again, even if that
Oh
happens at
yeah.
the big league level, it's not happening at the amateur level anytime
Ever.
soon, if ever. I can't imagine that technology ever becomes affordable enough to be in every high school park.
The Hawkeye system is like at the major league level is like 500 grand a stadium.
Yeah.
Even in the minor leagues is like 250 grand a stadium. Even now with the TrackMan, like, right, even and the thing that I think is going to happen and why it's going to take. I'm involved in technology with a different company, and one of the things that we're always fighting is like something could always go wrong. Like, and if it goes wrong on a pitch, how do you decide what to call on the one that the machine didn't get, right? Like, and
Yeah.
it happens. It does happen. It happens with the TrackMan. And Hawkeye, supposedly it doesn't happen because it's a camera oriented system as opposed to a
It's not
radar
sonar.
tracking.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen, but it's definitely an interesting conversation. Eddy, man, like I said, we've been on here a little bit longer than I planned on, but I know I can talk for a while, and you can talk for a while too, which is why I enjoy doing this stuff. So, man, appreciate having you on. I forgot to ask you earlier, if somebody is not following you on social media, I know you're a big league coach and you're not a social media aficionado, but for guys that want to follow you on social media, because you do post on there and you share stuff, where can they find you?
so it's just Eddy Rodriguez, EDDY Rodriguez, RODRIGUEZ, and the U to represent the good old University of Miami. But I'll tell you what though, man. what it's been cool, and I go, and the worst part, and JD Closser gives me crap because I right before I had my appendectomy not too long ago, about 6 weeks ago, I would be up every morning at 6 o'clock, and I would be bike riding, and I'd have a pre-workout in, and all of a sudden that's when I would start firing off tweets, and luckily I kind of backed off a little bit because I was getting a little bit aggressive on it, but like I think what saved me so far is that I've maintained all about the players, even promoting Andrew Lombardi yesterday. You know, like man, like give the kid like let's give the kids a chance. Like let's get these guys to realize their dreams, man. Like I was fortunate to play at a big university and the World Series and all these things. Like I want everybody to feel that, man. Like
Yeah.
walking into a stadium, you know, with custom Nike shoe, whatever. Like that's really cool. Like I want more people to have an opportunity to feel that, or walk into a major league stadium, or to, you know, make millions of dollars for your family. I want people to be able to do that. So, you know, and social media has been good because I've been able to connect a lot of people. And I think, look, I think social media, it is a necessary evil. I'll tell you what, it's helped me feed my family. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've done events, done camps, done different things. It's helped me. So, but like I said, as long as we don't make things black and white, as long as we just kind of vet everything that we say, we take a lot of pride that if it was our son or daughter hearing this, would we be happy about it? I think we're good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great thing to end on. You know, it's not black and white. There's gray area, and it's mostly gray area with whatever topic you want to talk about, whether it be throwing or social media or receiving or one knee stance or whatever. There's a lot of that going on, but definitely appreciate your, you know, sharing your thoughts on social media and then jumping on a call like this and sharing your thoughts, you know, to help the kid in the middle of Iowa that you referenced earlier who may not have access to a catching coach or an instructor. So, Eddie, man, I always enjoyed talking to you. Enjoyed having you on. I'll let you get back to your family tonight, but thanks again.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.